My name is Maya, and for 8 years, I was a ghost to the people who raised me. I wasn't dead, but in the eyes of my father, I might as well have been. I lived 3 states away, built a career in architectural design, bought a home, and fell in love, all without a single happy birthday or Merry Christmas. From the house on Maple Drive. But then, on a Tuesday in October, my phone buzzed. A number I hadn't saved but knew by heart. My father. I stared at the screen for 3 full minutes before I answered. His voice hadn't changed. It was still like gravel and old leather. He didn't ask how I was. He didn't apologize for the silence. He just said, Maya, it's Leo. He's sick. It's his kidneys. He needs a donor, and you're the only one left. Leo. My brother. The golden boy. The one who could do no wrong, even when he was doing everything wrong. Before we get into the rest of this, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if this story hits home for you. And tell me in the comments, where are you watching from, and what time is it? I want to know who is out there with me tonight. Now, let's go back. Back to 2016. To the night the silence began. Growing up in our house was like living in a solar system, where Leo was the sun and I was a cold, distant moon only meant to reflect his light. Leo was a star athlete, the kind of kid who got his picture in the local paper every Friday night. My father, a man who lived and breathed high school football, worshipped him. I was the nerd. I spent my time in the art studio or the library. To my father, that was wasted time. He didn't understand the blueprints I drew or the scholarships I was working toward. If it wasn't on a scoreboard, it didn't count. The breaking point happened during my college graduation. I was graduating summa cum laude. I was the first in our family to get a degree. I had invited them months in advance. I had even paid for their hotel room. But 2 hours before the ceremony, my mother called. She sounded frantic, but not for me. Maya, honey, we can't make it. Leo got into some trouble. He crashed the truck. Your father is at the station trying to sort it out. We have to be here for him. Is he hurt? I asked, my heart sinking. He's fine, just shaken up. But the police are being difficult. We can't leave him alone, Maya. You understand, right? You're so strong, you don't need us there like he does. I stood in my cap and gown, looking at my reflection in the dorm mirror. I wasn't strong, I was invisible. I didn't go to the ceremony. I packed my car, drove to the hotel, canceled the reservation, and kept driving. I moved to Chicago that night. I didn't leave a forwarding address. I changed my number. I started my life. For 8 years, I heard whispers through distant cousins. Leo had dropped out of 3 colleges. Leo had lost his job. Leo was finding himself while living in my parents' basement. And through it all, my father defended him. He was just unlucky. He was too talented for this town, and then came the phone call. He's dying, Maya. My father said, his voice cracking for the first time. The doctors say he won't last the year without a transplant. Your mother and I, we aren't matches. My blood pressure, her diabetes, we can't do it. You're his sister. You're his only hope. I felt a coldness spread through my chest. Not because I wanted Leo to suffer, but because of the audacity or years of nothing. 8 years of me building a life out of the scraps they left me, and the moment they needed a part, they remembered I existed. I'll come, I said. My voice was steady even though my hands were shaking. I'll get tested. I didn't do it for Leo. I didn't even do it for my father. I did it because I needed to see them. I needed to see if they had changed. I needed to see if I was still just a backup plan in their eyes. I booked a flight for the next morning. When I landed, the air felt different. Heavier. I took an Uber to the hospital, refusing my father's offer to pick me up. When I walked into the waiting room, I saw them. My father looked 20 years older. His shoulders were slumped, his face gray. My mother was clutching a rosary, her eyes red-rimmed. When my father saw me, he didn't hug me. He didn't cry. He stood up, walked over, and looked at my bag. Did you bring your medical records? He asked. That was it. No, I've missed you. No, I'm sorry. Just a request for the part they needed. I checked in with the transplant coordinator. They had everything ready. Blood draws, scans, interviews. I spent 6 hours in that hospital being poked and prodded. My parents sat in the waiting room the entire time, barely speaking to me when I came out for water. The results will be in tomorrow morning, the coordinator told us. Since you're siblings, the chances are high, but we have to be sure. My father nodded, a glint of hope in his eyes. The same pride he used to have when Leo scored a touchdown. You're doing a good thing, Maya, he said, patting my arm awkwardly. Family comes first. Always. I looked at him, really looked at him, and realized he actually believed that. He believed family meant me giving up a piece of myself to save the son he actually loved, while he hadn't given me a single thought in a decade. That night, I stayed in a hotel. I couldn't bear to sleep in my old room, which I heard had been turned into a trophy room for Leo's old jerseys. That the next morning, we gathered in a small consultation room. A doctor walked in holding a folder. My mother was shaking. My father was leaning forward, his hands gripped tight on his knees. The doctor cleared his throat. I have the results of the cross-matching and the HLA typing. He looked at me, then at my father. I'm afraid Maya is not a match for Leo. The silence that followed was deafening. I felt a strange, hollow sensation in my gut. But it was my father's reaction that changed everything. He didn't look sad for Leo. He didn't look relieved that I wouldn't have to go through surgery. He looked angry. He stood up, his face turning a deep, mottled purple. He looked at me as if I had failed a test on purpose, as if I had intentionally sabotaged my own DNA just to spite him. How is that possible? He barked at the doctor. They're siblings. You said the chances were high. Biology doesn't care about chances, sir, the doctor said calmly. They simply don't share the necessary markers. My father turned his gaze to me. It was the same look he gave me the night I told him I wanted to study art instead of sports. You always were difficult, Maya, he hissed. Even now. Even when your brother's life is on the line, you can't even do this and thing right. My mother gasped. Arthur, don't. But he wasn't finished. He stepped toward me, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of him. I was disgusted. Why did you even bother coming? He spat. To give us hope just to snatch it away? You probably knew. You probably knew you wouldn't match and you just wanted to see us crawl. I stood up slowly. I looked at the man who had called me a ghost for 8 years and realized that he was the one who was dead. Dead inside. I came because I thought you might have changed, I said, my voice barely a whisper but cutting through the room like a blade. I came because I thought that maybe, just maybe, you wanted your daughter back. But you don't. You want a kidney. And since I don't have what for you, I guess I'll go back to being dead. I turned to walk out, but my father grabbed my wrist. His grip was tight, desperate. You aren't leaving, he said. We'll find another way. You'll talk to the doctors. You'll tell them to check again. There has to be a mistake. I looked down at his hand on my arm, then back up at his eyes. There was a mistake, Dad, I said. But it wasn't the test. I wrenched my arm back, the skin where he had gripped me stinging red. My mother was sobbing into her hands now, but they weren't tears of grief for her son. They were tears of panic. They had lost their insurance policy. They had lost the easy fix. The mistake, I continued, my voice gaining a cold, hard edge I didn't know I possessed, was me thinking that 8 years of silence was because of pride. I thought you were too stubborn to call, but now I see the truth. You didn't call because you didn't need anything. You only view people as tools, Dad. And I'm a tool that doesn't fit the machine. I didn't wait for a rebuttal. I turned on my heel and walked out of that consultation room. I could hear my father shouting my name in the hallway, his voice echoing off the sterile linoleum walls, but I didn't stop. I walked past the nurse's station, past the vending machines, and straight out the sliding glass doors into the biting autumn air. I sat in my rental car for a long time, my forehead resting against the steering wheel. I should have felt relieved. I was off the hook. I wouldn't have to undergo major surgery. I wouldn't have to give up a kidney to a brother who hadn't spoken to me since I was 18. But all I felt was a crushing, hollow weight. My phone vibrated in the cup holder. I expected a flurry of angry texts from my father. Instead, it was a message from a number I didn't recognize. Maya? It's Leo. I heard you were here. Can we talk? Room 412. I stared at the message. Leo. The golden boy. The reason for of this. I hadn't seen him yet. My father had kept me in the waiting room and the testing labs, treating me like a biological specimen rather than a visitor. Against my better judgment, I went back inside. Room 412 was dim. The rhythmic wheezing of a ventilator and the steady beep 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 of the heart monitor filled the space. Leo looked nothing like the boy who had graced the front page of the sports section. He was pale, almost translucent. His once athletic frame withered away. "You look like hell," I said, standing in the doorway. He offered a weak, crooked smile. "Nice to see you too, Maya. It's been a while." 8 years, Leo. It's been 8 years. I know, he whispered. He coughed, a wet hacking sound that shook his entire frame. I wanted to caw, a dozen times, but Dad... He said you were busy. He said you'd moved on and didn't want anything to do with us. He told me you'd changed your number because you hated us. I felt a jolt of electricity run through my spine. He told you what? He said you blamed me for the accident on your graduation night, that you couldn't look at us anymore. Leo looked away, his eyes welling up. I believed him. Why wouldn't I? I was the screw-up. You were the one with the big life in the city. I walked to the side of his bed, my anger shifting from a blunt instrument into a sharp, focused needle. Leo, I didn't change my number to hide from you. I changed it because Dad told me I wasn't welcome home unless I was bringing money to help pay for your legal fees from the crash. He told me I was dead to him if I didn't skip my first week of work to come home and testify as a character witness for you. Leo's eyes widened. He told me he paid those fees himself. He said he took out a second mortgage. He tried to make me pay it first, I said. When I said I didn't have $50,000 fresh out of college, he hung up on me. That was the last time we spoke. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of 8 years of lies settling between us. Our father hadn't just separated us by distance. He had engineered a Cold War, feeding us different versions of the same betrayal to keep us from ever uniting against him. I'm sorry, Maya, Leo said, his voice trembling. For everything. For being the golden boy while you were the ghost. I never asked for it. I just wanted him to be proud of me, and the only way he knew how to be proud was if I was winning. And when I stopped winning, he just started pretending I was still the star, while using you at the bank. He can't use me anymore, I said. The tests came back. I'm not a match. Leo closed his eyes, a single tear tracked through the stubble on his cheek. I know. I heard him yelling in the hall. He's already talking about alternative options. What does that mean? He's looking into a private donor exchange, Leo said, his voice dropping to a whisper. But it costs money. A lot of it. He's already talking about selling the house. Or asking you for a loan. I felt a cold shiver. Of course. If I couldn't give the kidney, I could give the cash to my father. I was still just a resource to be mined. I have to go, Leo, I said, reaching out to touch his hand. It felt cold. I need to figure some things out. Don't let him do it, Maya, Leo said, gripping my fingers with surprising strength. Don't let him take anything else from you. I'm not worth it. I left the room, my mind racing. I headed toward the exit, but as I passed the cafeteria, I saw my parents sitting at a small square table. They didn't see me. My father was hunched over a yellow legal pad, scribbling furiously. My mother was watching him, her face a mask of exhaustion.
I moved closer, hiding behind a large pillar near the entrance.
We can get $500,000 for the house, my father was saying, his voice low but intense.
But the exchange program requires a good faith deposit of $50,000 just to get on the priority list, plus the surgery costs.
Arthur, we don't have $50,000, my mother whispered. The savings are gone. Leo's treatments last month took the rest.
Maya has it.
My father said. The way he said my name sent a chill down my spine. It wasn't the name of a daughter. It was an asset. I looked her up. She's a senior partner at that firm. She bought a brownstone last year. She's sitting on a gold mine. She said she was dead to us, Arthur. You heard her. She was emotional. My father dismissed with a wave of his hand. She'll come around. She's soft. She always was. Tonight, we'll have her over to the house. We'll show her the old photos. We'll make her feel that family guilt. By the time she leaves, she'll be writing the check. She has to. It's her brother's life. And if she says no? My father's expression darkened. The mask of the grieving parent slipped, revealing the predator underneath. She won't say no. I still have the paperwork from her college fund. The one she thinks I lost in the market. If I have to, I'll remind her that I have enough on her past taxes and that little incident with her first car to make her life very complicated. I felt the blood drain from my face. The incident with my first car? I had been 16. I had scraped a neighbor's fender, and my father had told me he handled it so it wouldn't go on my record. He had been holding onto a decade-old secret. A minor mistake from my childhood, just to use as leverage against me now. He wasn't a father. He was a blackmailer. I stepped out from behind the pillar. My heels clicked loudly on the tile floor. My parents both looked up, startled. My mother looked guilty. My father just looked expectant. "Maya, there you are," he said, his voice instantly shifting back to that faux warm gravel. "We were just talking about dinner. Your mother is making your favorite pot roast." I looked at the legal pad on the table. He tried to cover it with his hand, but I had already seen the numbers. "I'm not coming to dinner," I said. "Now, Maya, don't be like that," my father said, standing up. "We've had a hard day. We need to stick together. We need to talk about Leo's future." "I've already talked to Leo," I said. My father's eyes flickered. A flash of genuine fear crossed his face, followed quickly by rage. "You shouldn't have done that. He's weak. He doesn't need to be bothered by family drama." "He's not the one bothering him, Dad. You are." I leaned in closer, my voice low so the other people in the cafeteria wouldn't hear. "I heard you. I heard everything. The good faith deposit. The soft daughter. The car incident." My father's face turned that familiar shade of purple. "You were eavesdropping? How typical. Always looking for a reason to feel victimized." "I'm not a victim anymore," I said, "and I'm definitely not your bank. If you want to save Leo, sell your house. Sell your trophies. Sell your pride. But you are never, ever getting a dime from me." I turned to walk away, but my father's voice stopped me cold. "If you walk out that door, Maya, I'll call the precinct back home. I'll tell them exactly who was driving that night in 2008. The neighbor never did get his payout, you know. I just pocketed the insurance money and told him you fled the scene." "It's a felony, Maya. Leaving the scene of an accident involving property damage. I have the photos. I have the confession you wrote me when you were 16. I froze. He had lied to me back then. He hadn't handled it. He had set a trap and waited 14 years to spring it. I turned back to him. He was smiling now. A small, cruel smile that told me he thought he had won. "Pot roast is at 6, he said. "Don't be late." I stood there in the middle of the hospital cafeteria, realized that the betrayal didn't start today. It started the day I was born into a family that saw love as a debt and children as collateral. But he forgot one thing. I wasn't that scared 16-year-old girl anymore. And I was about to show him exactly what an architect does when she finds a rotten foundation. I didn't go to the house for pot roast. Instead, I went to a local diner, the kind with cracked vinyl booths and coffee that tastes like battery acid. I needed a place where no one knew my name, where I could think without the suffocating weight of my father's expectations pressing down on me. He thought he had me. He really did. He thought that a 14-year-old secret, a scraped fender, and a lie he'd manufactured was enough to bring my entire career and life crashing down. That's the thing about people like my father. They assume everyone else is as terrified of their shadows as they are. I pulled out my laptop and began to work. Not on blueprints for my firm, but on a blueprint for my survival. If he wanted to play dirty, if he wanted to use legalities to extort $50,000 and a sense of obedience out of me, then I needed to know exactly what ground I was standing on. Before I continue with what I found, Getter, I want to ask you something. Have you ever had a family member hold a mistake from your childhood over your head? Something you did before you even knew who you were? If you have, just type yes in the comments. I need to know I'm not the only wed who's dealt with this kind of emotional hostage-taking. I spent 3 hours digging. I called an old friend from high school who is now a paralegal in our hometown. I didn't tell her everything, just that I was looking into some old insurance stuff from 2008. Maya, she said, her voice dropping as she searched the digital archives. There's no record of an accident involving you in 2008. No police report, no insurance claim filed against your dad's policy, nothing. My heart skipped. What about the neighbor? Mr. Henderson on the corner. Mr. Henderson moved to a nursing home years ago, Maya. But I'm looking at the property records. There was a claim filed back then, but it wasn't for a car accident. Your dad filed a claim for vandalism on his own truck. He claimed someone keyed it and smashed the taillight. He got a payout of $3,000. The truth hit me like a physical blow. I hadn't hit Mr. Henderson's car. I had probably just bumped the curb or scratched the paint on my dad's precious truck, and he had used that tiny mistake to commit insurance fraud, and then told me I'd committed a felony to keep me under his thumb. He had been lying to me for 14 years. I felt a wave of nausea, followed by a cold, crystalline clarity. I checked out of my hotel that night. I couldn't stay in this town anymore. But I wasn't going back to Chicago yet. I had more stop to make. The next morning, I went back to the hospital. I didn't go to the consultation room. I went straight to Leo's room. He was awake, staring at a daytime talk show with the volume muted. He looked even smaller than the day before. I'm leaving, Leo, I said. He nodded slowly. I don't blame you. Get out while you can. I'm not just leaving. I'm going to find you a donor. Leo let out a dry, rattling laugh. Maya, you heard the doctor. You aren't a match. And unless you have a secret sibling I don't know about, I at the bottom of a very long list. I'm not going to be the donor, I said, sitting on the edge of his bed. But Dad is. Leo frowned. He told the doctors he wasn't a match. Blood pressure, remember? The medical disqualification? Leo, Dad lies. He lies about everything. He told me I was a felon to try and get $50,000 out of me yesterday. He told you I hated you so we wouldn't talk. Do you really think he's telling the truth about his health, if it means he doesn't have to go under the knife? I saw a spark of something in Leo's eyes. Not hope exactly, but a realization. He's scared, Leo whispered. He's always been terrified of hospitals. When Mom had her gallbladder out, he wouldn't even enter the room until she was awake and dressed. He's a coward, Leo. He's willing to let you fade away, rather than face a needle himself, all while pretending he's the hero trying to save the family. But I'm going to make sure the doctors get a real look at him. I left Leo's room and headed for the transplant coordinator's office. I didn't care about family loyalty anymore. That ship hadn't just sailed, it had sunk. I knocked on the door of Sarah, the coordinator. She looked up from her files, surprised to see me. Maya? I thought you were heading back to Chicago. I have a concern about the potential living donor pool, I said, my voice steady. My father, Arthur. He told the team he was disqualified due to high blood pressure and diabetes. I'd like to see the results of those screenings. Sarah looked uncomfortable. Maya, you know I can't share his private medical records with you. I don't need you to share them. I just need you to tell me if he actually took the tests. Because I have reason to believe he provided verbal history rather than undergoing the physical screening. She hesitated, her eyes flickering to her computer screen. The silence stretched. Then, she sighed. He refused the physical exam, Maya. He claimed his primary care physician had already ruled him out and provided a summary letter. We usually encourage a full in-house screening, but we can't force someone to be a donor. Check the letterhead on that summary, I said. Check if that doctor even exists. I waited in the hall while she made a few calls. 10 minutes later, she stepped out. Her face was pale. The clinic on that letterhead closed 2 years ago, and the doctor listed, well, he's been retired since 2021. My father hadn't just lied to us. He had forged medical documents to avoid being the one to save his golden boy. He loved the idea of Leo, the trophies, the glory, the reflection of his own ego. But he didn't love Leo enough to give up a kidney. I felt a dark, heavy curtain fall over my heart. This was the man who had raised me. This was the man who had spent the last 24 hours calling me difficult and selfish. I walked to the waiting room. My parents were there, of course. My father was holding a stack of brochures for the private donor exchange, probably preparing his next pitch for my money. Maya, he called out, standing up with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. You missed dinner. Your mother was very disappointed, but we've been looking at these programs. Stop it, Dad, I said. My voice wasn't loud, but it stopped him mid-sentence. Several people in the waiting room turned to look. Excuse me? The summary from your doctor. Dr. Aras? The one who retired 4 years ago? I stepped into his personal space, watching the color drain from his face. The forged letterhead? Sarah is in her office right now calling the hospital board. My mother stood up, her hand flying to her mouth. Arthur? What is she talking about? She's lying. My father hissed, though his eyes were darting around the room like a trapped animal. She's trying to deflect because she won't help her brother. I already tried to help him, I said. I went under the needle. I gave the blood. I was ready to go to surgery. But you? You wouldn't even let them wrap a blood pressure cuff around your arm. You forged a letter because you're a coward. I am the head of this family, he roared, his voice finally breaking. I have given everything for you kids. I pay the bills. I keep the secrets. You keep the lies, I corrected. And the secret about the car. I know about the insurance fraud, Dad. I know there was no accident with Mr. Henderson. I know you pocketed $3,000 and spent 14 years making me feel like a criminal so you could control me. My mother looked at him, her eyes wide with a dawning, horrific realization. Arthur, is that true? About the car? About the doctor? He didn't answer her. He looked at me, and for the first time, I saw it. The mask was gone. There was no golden boy, no family first, no loving father. There was just a small, bitter man who was losing his grip on the only thing he ever valued. Power. You think you're so smart, he whispered, his voice trembling with rage. You think you can just come back here and ruin everything I've built. You ruined it yourself, Dad, the moment you decided your ego was worth more than Leo's life. I turned to my mother. Mom, if you want to save your son, you need to get him a real lawyer and a real medical advocate. Because the man sitting next to you is going to let him die just to save himself the trouble of a hospital stay. I walked away. I didn't look back. I could hear my mother starting to scream at him, a high, thin sound of pure betrayal. I could hear my father trying to bluster, trying to find a new lie to cover the old ones, but the foundation was gone. I went back to the hotel, packed my things, and sat on the bed. I felt like I was breaking. Everything I thought I knew about my childhood, even the bad parts, was built on a fabrication. I wasn't the difficult daughter. I was the scapegoat for a man who couldn't handle his own failures. I called my office in Chicago. I told them I needed another week. I wasn't done yet. Because there was still the matter of Leo, and there was still the matter of the $50,000 my father thought he was going to take from me. I realized then that I didn't just want to survive this. I wanted justice. Not just for me, but for the boy. In room 412, who was dying while his father played God with a forged letterhead. But as I sat there, the adrenaline started to fade, replaced by a crushing loneliness. I had no family. I had a brother who was a stranger, a mother who was a victim, and a father who was a monster. I looked at the phone. I had what person left to call. The person I had spent 8 years trying to protect from this drama. My fiancé, David. Maya, he answered on the first ring. Are you okay? You sound different. I'm not okay, David, I whispered, the tears finally coming. It's worse than I thought. It's so much worse. I'm coming there, he said. Send me the address. I'll be there by morning. No, I said, wiping my eyes. Don't come here. I don't want you anywhere near this house. But I need you to do something for me. I need you to call your uncle, the one in the district attorney's office. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Maya, what are you planning? I'm not planning a renovation, David, I said, looking at the flickering lights of the town I used to call home. I'm planning a demolition. The demolition didn't start with a sledgehammer. It started with a spreadsheet. I spent that night in my hotel room with 3 phones on the desk and my laptop screen glowing. David's uncle, a retired prosecutor with a grudge against insurance scammers, gave me the roadmap. Maya, he told me over the phone, his voice a steady anchor. If your father forged medical documents and used a manufactured criminal history to solicit $50,000 from you, that's not just being a bad dad, that's attempted extortion and fraud. But you have to be sure. You have to get him to admit it when someone else is listening. I knew exactly how to make him talk. My father's greatest weakness was his own arrogance. He believed I was soft. He believed that if he pushed hard enough, I would eventually fold because that's what I had done for 18 years. Before I go into the confrontation that changed everything, I want to ask you, have you ever had to record a conversation or keep receipts just to prove you weren't the crazy one? To prove that what you were seeing was actually happening? If you've ever had to be your own detective in your own family, drop a truth in the comments. It's a lonely place to be, isn't it? The next morning, I sent a text to my father. I've thought about what you said. I'm overwhelmed. But I want to help Leo. Meet me at the park near the high school. Just you and me. I have the paperwork for the transfer. It was the perfect bait. The park was where he used to watch Leo play. It was his territory. His kingdom. He replied within seconds. Smart girl. I knew you'd do the right thing for your brother. 10 a.m. I arrived early. I was wearing my most professional suit. The charcoal as I wore when I was pitching multi-million-dollar projects. It was my armor. Beneath the lapel, pinned to the silk lining, was a small, high-sensitivity digital recorder. In my pocket, my phone was on a live audio bridge with David's uncle. My father pulled up in his truck, the same truck he had claimed was vandalized back in 2008. He hopped out, looking triumphant. He even tried to hug me. I stepped back, holding up a manila folder. Let's just talk, Dad, I said, my voice intentionally trembling slightly. I needed him to think I was on the verge of breaking. I have the 50,000, but I'm scared. I'm scared about the car accident. If I give you this money, how do I know you won't still report me to the police? How do I know I'm safe? He chuckled, a dry, patronizing sound. He leaned against the park bench, looking out at the empty football field. Maya, honey, it's called leverage. As long as you're taking care of this family, that file stays in my safe. You pay for the donor exchange, you help Leo get back on his feet, and we're all a big happy family again. It's a small price to pay for your freedom, isn't it? But the neighbor. I pressed, Mr. Henderson, you said he never got paid. What if he remembers? What if the police realize you pocketed the insurance money back then? My father laughed harder now. Oh, Henderson is in a home, Maya. He doesn't remember what he had for breakfast, let alone a scratch on a fender from 15 years ago. And as for the insurance, I handled that. I told them some kids in hoodies did it. Got a nice check, bought those new tires Leo wanted for graduation.
It was a win-win.
You learned a lesson about being careful, and the house got a little extra cash. No one got hurt. Except me, I said, my voice hardening. I've lived for 14 years thinking I was a criminal because of you. Oh, stop being so dramatic, he snapped, his patience thinning. You turned out fine. You're rich, aren't you? Now, give me the folder. We need to get that deposit to the exchange program by noon. What about your health, Dad? I asked, shifting gears. The hospital said you forged the letter from Dr. Aris. They're talking about a board review. If they find out you lied to avoid being a donor, they might kick Leo off the list entirely. Why would you risk that? He turned to me, his eyes narrowing. The doting father act, was gone. I'm 62 years old, Maya. I'm not letting some surgeon cut me open and take a piece of me. Leo is young. He's got time to wait for a stranger's organ. And besides, if I'm the donor, I'm laid up for months. Who's going to run the house? Who's going to manage things? No, it's better this way. You pay the money, someone else gives the kidney, and I stay whole. It's basic logic. Basic logic, I repeated. To let your son die rather than take a risk yourself, while extorting your daughter to pay for your cowardice. Watch your tone, he hissed, stepping toward me. I am your father. I made you. I can unmake you just as easily. Now, give me the damn money. I didn't give him the folder. Instead, I pulled my phone out of my pocket. Did you get all that, Mr. Vance? I asked into the speaker. Every word, Maya, David's uncle replied, his voice clear and booming in the quiet park. Extortion, insurance fraud, and witness tampering. I think we have plenty for a preliminary filing. My father froze. The color didn't just leave his face, it seemed to evaporate. He looked at the phone, then at me, then at the folder in my hand, which I opened to reveal nothing but blank sheets of printer paper. You recorded me? He whispered. I didn't just record you, Dad. I'm ending this. He lunged for the phone, but I was faster. I backed away, my heart hammering against my ribs, but for the first time in my life, I wasn't shaking because of him. I was shaking because of the sheer power of the truth.
You're going to jail.
He growled, though he sounded more like a cornered animal than a threat.
I'll tell them you set me up.
I'll tell them you're the one who forged the letter. With what evidence? I asked. I've been in Chicago for 8 years. You have the letterhead in your desk. You have the insurance check records from 2008. And now, the DA's office has your own voice admitting to it. I walked back to my car. He followed me, shouting, pleading, then cursing, his voice cracking as he realized the Golden Boy's father was about to become the town's biggest scandal. But the demolition wasn't finished. There was still the matter of Leo. I drove straight back to the hospital. I didn't go to the waiting room. I went to the administration office. I presented the recording and the evidence of the forgery. I told them that while my father was a fraud, my brother was a victim. We can't keep Leo on the list if the family has compromised the process, the administrator told me, looking pained. I'm not asking you to keep him on the list because of my father, I said. I'm asking you to look at a cross-donation. I can't give to Leo, but I can give to someone else. If I donate my kidney to a stranger who is a match, will you move Leo to the top of the list for the next compatible organ? The room went silent. It's called a paired exchange or a donor chain. It's a way for people who aren't matches for their loved ones to still save them by saving someone else. Maya, the doctor said, leaned forward. That's a massive sacrifice. You'd be undergoing surgery for a complete stranger. I've spent 8 years being a ghost, I said, looking him in the eye. I'd rather be a donor than a ghost. And if it means my brother gets a chance to live a life away from that man, then it's the best design I've ever made. I walked out of that office and into Leo's room. He was sleeping, his breath hitched and shallow. I sat by his bed and took his hand. It was the first time I felt like a sister in a decade. Hang on, Leo, I whispered. The foundation is cleared. We're going to build something new. But as I sat there, a nurse came in, looking frantic. Maya? Your mother is on the phone. She's at the house. She says your father, he's doing something. You need to get there. My stomach dropped. I had taken away his power. I had taken away his secrets. I hadn't realized that a man with nothing left to lose is the most dangerous kind of architect. I didn't think. I just ran. I sprinted through the hospital parking lot, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. The drive to my parents' house, a route I had traveled 1,000 times in my dreams and nightmares, took only 10 minutes, but it felt like 10 hours. When I pulled into the driveway, the scene was eerily quiet. My father's truck was parked crookedly on the lawn, the driver's side door wide open. I saw my mother standing on the front porch, her shadow long and distorted in the late afternoon sun. She was holding her phone to her ear, her face pale and frozen. "Mom!" I yelled, jumping out of the car before the engine had even fully cut out. "What's happening? Where is he?" She didn't look at me. She just pointed toward the backyard. "He's in the shed, Maya. He's burning things." I ran around the side of the house, the smell of wood smoke and melting plastic hitting me instantly. My father was standing over a rusted metal oil drum, the flames licking at the sky. He was tossing armfuls of paper into the fire, folders, old photos, ledgers. "Dad, stop!" I screamed. He turned to look at me, and I barely recognized him. His hair was disheveled, his eyes bloodshot and wild. He looked like a man who had finally seen the end of the world and decided to help it along. "It's all gone, Maya," he shouted over the roar of the fire. "You wanted the truth? Here it is. It's ash. The insurance papers, the medical records, the old photos of you and Leo, all of it. If I don't have a family to lead, then there is no family." "You're destroying Leo's history," I said, trying to move closer, but the heat was too intense. "You're destroying everything he has left." "He has nothing left," my father barked, tossing a heavy leather book into the drum. Leo's high school scrapbook. "He's dying in a hospital bed because you were too selfish to give him what he needed, and you were too busy playing detective to be a daughter." "I'm saving him, Dad. I'm doing a paired exchange. I'm giving a kidney to a stranger so Leo can get us." The movement of his hand stopped midair. He held a small, framed photo, only ad of the four of us together, taken at the lake when I was 10. He looked at the photo, then at me. "You're what?" "I'm going to surgery, Dad. For real. Not for a lie, and not because I'm being blackmailed. I'm doing it because I actually care about my brother, something you wouldn't understand." For a second, the rage in his eyes flickered. It was replaced by something much worse. Humiliation. I had done what he wouldn't. I had proven that my love was active and sacrificial, while his was a hollow performance. He looked down at the photo in his hand. He gripped the frame so hard his knuckles turned white. Then, with a slow, deliberate motion, he dropped it into the fire. "Then go," he whispered, his voice suddenly cold and hollow. "Go be the hero. But don't you ever come back to this house. You aren't mine anymore." "I haven't been yours for a long time," I said. I turned and walked back to the front of the house. My mother was sitting on the porch steps now, her head in her hands. I sat down next to her. The smell of the fire followed me, a bitter reminder of a childhood that was being literally incinerated just yards away. "I'm leaving him, Maya," she said, her voice small. I saw the forged letter. I saw the look on his face when you told him you knew about the insurance. "I've lived with a ghost for 30 years, and I didn't even know it. Come with me, Mom. Not to Chicago, not yet. But let's get you a hotel. Let's get you away from him." She shook her head. "I have to stay for Leo. Until he's through the surgery. But after that, I'm going to your aunt's in Florida." I hugged her. A real hug. The first in nearly a decade. She felt fragile, like a bird with a broken wing, but there was a new strength in her grip. I spent the next 3 days in a blur of medical clearance. Since I was an out-of-state donor for a paired exchange, the logistics were a nightmare. I had to meet with psychologists, social workers, and 3 different surgical teams. David arrived on the second day. Seeing him in the hospital lobby was like finally being able to breathe after being underwater for a week. "You don't have to do this, Maya," he said, holding my hands. "We can find another way. We can hire more lawyers. We can find another donor." "I have to, David. For the first time in my life, I'm the one drawing the lines. I'm the one deciding the structure. If I do this, Leo lives. And if Leo lives, my father loses. It's the only way to balance the books." The morning of the surgery was gray and drizzly. I was prepped in a room just 2 doors down from where a stranger, a father of 3 from Ohio, was being prepped to receive my kidney. In exchange, a young woman in California had donated her kidney, which was currently on a private jet flying toward our hospital for Leo. It was a chain of life, built on the kindness of people who didn't know each other. It was the exact opposite of everything my father believed in. They wheeled me past Leo's room on the way to the operating room. He was awake, hooked up to a dozen monitors. He looked at me, and through the oxygen mask, he mouthed two words. Thank you. I blew him a kiss and closed my eyes as the anesthesia began to take hold. The last thing I remember thinking was, I hope the fire went out. When I woke up, the world was a hazy glow of white light and the dull throb of surgical pain. David was there, his face the first thing I saw. It worked, he whispered, leaning down to kiss my forehead. The kidney arrived. Leo is in recovery. The doctors say it's a perfect match. He's already producing urine, Maya. He's going to make it. I tried to smile, but my face felt heavy. And the other guy? The father? He's doing great too. His family is in the waiting room. They want to meet you when you're up for it. They're calling you their miracle. I drifted back to sleep, a peaceful, dreamless sleep. But the peace didn't last. 2 days later, while I was still struggling to walk down the hallway with my IV pole, a man in a suit walked into my room. He wasn't a doctor. He was an investigator with the state police. Ms. Sterling? I'm Detective Miller. I'm sorry to bother you during your recovery, but we've been processing the scene at your parents' residence. My heart skipped. The fire? Did he burn the house down? No, the detective said, pulling out a tablet. The fire was contained to the drum, but we found something in the ashes, something your father didn't quite manage to destroy. He showed me a photo of a charred, partially melted metal box. It had been buried under the false bottom of the oil drum. Inside this box, Miller continued, we found bank records. Not from 2008, but from the last 5 years. It seems your father has been receiving monthly payments from a trust fund established by your late grandmother. A trust fund that was supposed to be split equally between you and Leo when you turned 25. I felt the air leave my lungs. My grandmother, my mother's mother, had passed away when I was 19. We were told she had died penniless, her medical bills swallowing everything. How much? I whispered. The total diverted over the last 8 years, including interest? It's just over $400,000, Maya. He's been using your death as a ghost to justify keeping your share, and he's been spending Leo's share on legal fees that never existed. The betrayal had a new floor. He hadn't just used us as tools. He had robbed us of our inheritance, using the money to fuel the very lifestyle that allowed him to look down on us. He had let Leo's health deteriorate while sitting on a fortune that could have paid for the best care years ago. Where is he? I asked. That detective's expression turned grim. That's the thing, Miss Sterling. When we went to serve the warrant this morning, the house was empty. His truck was gone. And so was the remaining balance in those accounts. I looked out the window at the hospital parking lot. Somewhere out there, my father was run. He had burned the evidence, taken the money, and abandoned his dying son and his broken wife. But he had missed one thing. The metal box. We tracked his last cell tower ping, the detective said. He's heading south. But before he went off the grid, he sent one last message to your phone. I reached for my phone on the nightstand. There was one unread text from Dad. You think you won. But you're just like me, Maya. You'll spend the rest of your life wondering who's coming for what's yours. Enjoy the kidney. It's the only thing I'm ever giving you. I stared at the screen until the words blurred. He was still trying to poison me. Still trying to make his malice my inheritance. I looked at the scar on my side, hidden beneath the bandages. It was a mark of a gift, not a theft. He's wrong, I said to the empty room. But then, the door opened. It was my mother. She was shaking, holding a legal envelope.
Maya.
She gasped. I found this in the mailbox. It's from a lawyer. Your father, he didn't just take the money. I took the envelope. It was a deed. A deed to the house on Maple Drive. And a signed confession, witnessed by a notary 2 days ago. He hadn't just run away. He had left a final, shocking twist that would change the legal standing of our entire family forever. And as I read the first line of the document, I realized the biggest cliffhanger of my life was just beginning. The document in my hand felt heavier than the medical bills, heavier than the burden of the surgery I had just survived. It wasn't a letter of apology. It wasn't a suicide note. It was a quitclaim deed for the house on Maple Drive, but it was signed over not to me and not to my mother. It was signed over to Leo. But it was the attached affidavit that made the room spin. It and the signed confession my father admitted to the trust fund theft, the insurance fraud, and the forgeries. But he added a final, chilling detail. He had leveraged the house, the very you he just gave to Leo, against a massive private loan from a group of investors who weren't banks. He had signed the deed over to his dying son to transfer the liability of the debt. He wasn't giving Leo a home. He was giving him a legal nightmare that would ensure the creditors came knocking at the hospital door. He had fled with the liquid cash, leaving the golden boy to drown in the debt of the throne he'd been sat on for 28 years. "He's truly gone, isn't he?" my mother whispered, looking at the papers. "He didn't just leave us. He set a fire and locked the door from the outside." I looked at the deed, then at my mother, then at the IV dripping into my arm. My father thought he was the only one who knew how to play with contracts. He thought that because he had been the architect of our misery for so long, no one else could read the blueprints. "Mom," I said, my voice crackling with a newfound strength, "call David's uncle, now, and tell him I need a forensic accountant and a real estate litigator. My father thinks he's clever, but he's forgotten one thing. I design structures for a living. I know exactly where the load-bearing walls are, and I know exactly how to pull them down without getting hit." The next month was a blur of legal warfare. As I recovered from the surgery, my hospital room became a command center. Leo was healing, his new kidney working miracles on his tired body. When he was finally strong enough to sit up, I told him everything. I told him about the house, the debt, and the trust fund. I expected him to break. I expected the golden boy to crumble now that the gold had been revealed as spray-painted lead. It instead. Leo looked at the deed and laughed. It was a dry, weak sound, but it was real. "He really thinks I want that house?" Leo asked. "That house is a tomb, Maya. Let the creditors have it. Let them tem the jerseys, the trophies, and the basement. I don't want a single brick that has his name on it." "We aren't just letting them tag it, Leo," I said. "We're going to use the confession to void the loan. Since the money was obtained through documented fraud and the collateral was stolen from a trust, the debt is unenforceable. We're going to sell that house, pay off the legitimate taxes, and use the remaining equity to set Mom up in Florida. And the rest? The rest is going into a fund for your recovery." Justice didn't happen overnight. It happened in small, quiet victories. It happened when the state police caught up with my father at a motel in Georgia. He had spent half the money already, but the other half was recovered. It happened when the investors were forced to walk away from the house after their predatory loan was laughed out of court. And it happened on a Tuesday in spring, 6 months after the surgery. I was back in Chicago, standing on the balcony of my brownstone. My side still ached sometimes when it rained. A physical reminder of the choice I had made. My phone buzzed. It was a photo from Leo. He was standing on a beach in Florida with my mother. He looked healthy, his face full, his eyes bright. He was starting a degree in social work. He wanted to help kids who grew up in houses like ours. My father was awaiting trial. He had tried to call me from jail once. I didn't answer. I didn't need to hear his voice. I didn't need his why or his how. I had built my own why. I realized then that my father's final text had been wrong. I wasn't just like him. I didn't spend my life wondering who was coming for what was mine. Because what was mine wasn't a house, or a trust fund, or a kidney. What was mine was my integrity. It was the fact that when the world gave me a reason to be a ghost, I chose to be a savior. When my family offered me a legacy of lies, I designed a truth that could hold the weight of a new life. I looked down at the street below. David was coming up the steps, carrying a bag of groceries and a bouquet of sunflowers. He saw me and waved. Loyalty to yourself is the first loyalty, everything else comes after. You can love people and still refuse to let them destroy you. You can forgive without returning to the scene of the crime. I am Maya Sterling. I am an architect, a sister, and a donor. And for the first time in my life, I am not a ghost. I am the one who stayed. I am the one who built. That's my story, and if you're still here, thank you. That means more than you know. Now, I have a question for you. If you were in my shoes and you found out your parents had stolen your inheritance while calling you selfish, would you have still donated the kidney to save your brother? Or would you have walked away and let the foundation crumble? Drop your answer in the comments. I read every single best. And if this story reminded you of someone who needs to hear that they are allowed to stop giving to people who only ache, share it with them. Subscriber for more stories of justice and recovery. And I'll see you in the next step.